Welcome to Vanished Voices. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Shannon. One thing we've learned doing this podcast is that people who listen to Vanished Voices aren't passive. You send us tips, case suggestions, and case updates. You share episodes with your communities. You show up. So I'm asking you to show up one more way. If you haven't already, rate and review the show. It's one of the most effective ways to help new listeners find us. On Apple Podcasts, just scroll down on the show page and tap the stars or leave a written review. On Spotify, there's a 3-dot icon right at the top. On Audible, scroll down past the episodes and tap Write a Review. And if YouTube is your platform, make sure you're following us as a subscriber. This community is how these stories travel. Help us grow it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Before we get into today's episode, I have a few case updates for you.
Oh, looking forward to this.
All right, first up, a case we covered in January of this year, Anna Marie Scott. If you haven't listened to that one, Anna was a 23-year-old mother of two. She was an enrolled member of the Pyramid Lake Ute tribe. She was found shot to death inside the trunk of a burned car on Interstate 580 near the Galena Creek Bridge back in February of 2022. So for more than 4 years, her family had almost nothing. The county sheriff's office wouldn't even confirm basic details. They wouldn't tell them when she was killed, what kind of car she was found in, not who owned it, nothing. That changed at the beginning of June this year. A federal grand jury indicted a man named Delche Astor. He was a member of the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, and he was indicted on one count of second-degree murder within Indian country. Prosecutors allege that Astor was involved in Anna's murder on or around February 2nd, 2022. He was arraigned in federal court and pleaded not guilty.
Good news.
The sheriff's office held a press conference to announce the arrest. But even with this update, the family and the community still have more questions than answers. And interestingly, with this press conference, no advance notice was given to the media. So a lot of the reporting calls it an impromptu press conference.
Interesting.
They didn't answer basic questions about the investigation, saying only that it remains active. So we'll keep watching this case as it moves through the courts and bring you an update if anything changes. Second, I want to bring you an update on something out of Baltimore tied to a case we covered in April, Felicia Barnes. If you haven't listened to that one, Felicia was a 16-year-old North Carolina honor student who disappeared while visiting her half-sister in Northwest Baltimore, and that was over the 2010 holidays. Now, someone was tried for her murder. His name was Michael Johnson, and we did talk about this in the episode. He went through 3 trials. He was convicted at the first one. He served 3 years. Then the conviction was overturned, and a judge ultimately acquitted him in 2018. So Felicia's family really never got the answer they were looking for. But now Johnson is back in the news, just not for Felicia's case. In July of 2024, he was arrested after his girlfriend at the time, an 18-year-old, who'd recently aged out of foster care, told a social worker that he had strangled and raped her over the course of about 6 hours in his apartment. In April, a jury found him guilty of first-degree rape and first-degree assault. He was acquitted, though, of attempted murder. On July 1st, he was sentenced. He was given 2 consecutive life sentences plus 25 years.
Okay. I was about to get a little irritated at the acquitted of attempted murder, but the sentencing, I will accept that.
Yes, I felt the exact same way. When I saw that come out in April and then was waiting for the sentencing, I was wondering how that would play out. When he was sentenced, Felicia's family was in the courtroom. The Baltimore County State's Attorney General said the sentence means Johnson will never be a free man again.
Yeah.
So while it isn't justice for Felicia, her sister said watching this trial felt personal, like she was watching some of what happened to Felicia finally be named out loud, even if it was for someone else. And finally, I have a huge update on a case we covered in December of 2025. And I have to be honest, I did not expect to be writing this update, but very happy to be sharing it with you. Sarah Nicole Graham was 18 years old when she disappeared in North Carolina, and that was on February 4th, 2015, while she was on her way to work. If you remember this one, her van was found abandoned in a field near Interstate 95, but Sarah herself had vanished without a trace. So for over a decade, her family was in this terrible in-between. Now, the rule in North Carolina is that after 7 years, they allow missing persons to be presumed dead or classified from like a missing person to a homicide.
Oh,
And that didn't happen for 11 years, but it did happen this year in early June. Then on June 25th of this year, the county sheriff's office, who was working with the FBI and the U.S. Marshals, arrested 3 people in connection with Sarah's death. One of them was her own stepmother. So Connie Graham has been charged with first-degree murder, felony conspiracy, and altering, stealing, or destroying evidence. The arrest warrants allege that Connie killed Sarah and then destroyed evidence, including the bed, clothing, and even flooring from inside the home. Her 2 sons, who were Sarah's stepbrothers, were also charged. Luke Locklear was charged with felony conspiracy and evidence tampering, and Bobby McClellan with those same charges, plus accessory after the fact. According to the warrants, Luke helped burn evidence, and Bobby helped dispose of Sarah's remains.
interesting.
Yeah. And if you'll remember, the detail that makes this even harder to sit with, Connie Graham had worked for the county sheriff's office when this happened.
I remember this now, yeah.
Yeah, she was terminated about 2 months after Sarah disappeared, though no reason was given publicly at the time.
Yeah, they always said that it wasn't related.
Right. And we were trying to figure out what
Yeah.
it could be for. And maybe it wasn't related.
Right, which, I mean, I get that either way you wouldn't disclose why, because that's someone's private information, why they're terminated from a job, but
Sure. Now, Connie was denied bond. The 2 sons are each being held. In one reporting I saw said $100,000 bond. The other one said $1 million bond.
either way.
Different, but both, being held.
Well, I mean, what, 10%? So it's technically right. It's probably $1 million. So you have to pay $100K to get out, and they probably neither one of them have that.
That must be what that difference was.
Yeah.
Now, despite these arrests, Sarah still hasn't been found. The FBI is offering a $5,000 reward for information that leads to the recovery of her remains. And the sheriff said during their press conference that they feel like there is so much more to be told about this story.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we'll keep watching that too as it unfolds and hopefully have another update for you.
Yeah. Did they have a court date yet? I'm sure it's just pretrial, but
Not that I noted,
okay.
but I would guess soon because it was only 10 days ago.
Mhm.
Yeah. At least they had their bond
Arraignment,
hearing.
yeah.
You ready to jump into today's case?
I am.
All right. In January of 2020, a woman named Latonya Moore stood up in front of an Illinois Senate committee for the 3rd time. Not the first, the 3rd. She'd already done this twice before, and she was back again. Why? Because nothing had changed. And she said something to that room that carried real weight. She said, "My daughter, to me, feels like a John Doe. She don't even exist." Her daughter had a name. Everyone who knew her called her Nene. She had a 7-year-old girl of her own. She, of course, existed completely to the people who loved her. But what Latonya was describing wasn't confusion about who her daughter was. It was what happens when a police department, a crime lab, a whole system treats a case like it doesn't matter enough to finish. Like the person at the center of it is somehow interchangeable. Unknown, a John Doe. This is Shantieya Smith's story. And it's also the story of everything that happened around her and kept happening for years after she was gone. Now, like I just mentioned, Shantieya had a 7-year-old daughter. And every single morning, rain or shine, she would sling that little girl's backpack over her shoulder, and the two of them would dash hand in hand across the street to the neighborhood elementary school. And not usually. Her family said every single morning without fail. Her family called her Nene. She was 26 years old, slender, with cherry red or bottle blonde weaves, depending on her mood at the time, that people who knew her say matched her whole personality. Right. 3 generations of her family lived under one roof in North Lawndale on Chicago's west side. And Shantieya was the one you called when there was trouble. She was also the one who would teach anybody in that living room the latest Chicago dance styles, whether they asked to learn them or not.
A little two-step.
Yeah, exactly. On May 25th, 2018, Shantieya walked out her front door on a warm afternoon to run a quick errand. It was supposed to be so fast that she didn't even bring her phone with her. Her mother didn't think much of it at first. I mean, why would you? It's just a quick errand. But she didn't come back. And over the following hours and then days, that ordinary, forgettable, quick goodbye turned into something else entirely. Shantieya wasn't answering calls. She couldn't have been. Her phone was still at home. And she wasn't there the next morning to dash across the street with her daughter for school. Latonya put it plainly to a reporter later. Shantieya's not coming home was not normal at all. A mother who knows her daughter's routine down to the hour doesn't need to embellish that sentence to make you understand something was wrong. Now, Shantieya had left with a man she knew. Her mother said he later told her he dropped her back off at home safely. But her mom lives there. She watched Shantieya get in the car with him, and she knew that she hadn't been dropped back at home. When Latonya pushed, when she started asking more pointed questions, and eventually told him that she was going to police, he sent her threatening text messages. I'm going to read you a couple of them. These aren't cryptic. They aren't veiled threats. They're straight up threatening. One says, quote, "Enjoy your time and days because they will be cut short. Your days are on a countdown, so enjoy your time and days." And then another one said, "Make sure you save all these messages so somebody can give it to police."
And this is to her mother?
Mm-hmm. She has them. She showed them on one of the interviews that she gave with the local news.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I would be terrified getting those text messages.
I mean, I don't even know if I'd be terrified. I'd be more like, what is this? What is this energy? Like, what?
It is some...
I mean, that's like 0 to 100.
Right.
For no reason. I'm just, where's my kid?
Exactly. I left her at home. No, you didn't. I lived there.
Yeah, like she never came in. Well, then, normal would have been, well, I don't know where she went then. I dropped her off. But to go straight to threatening her is wild.
Wild. And they don't feel like they're the messages of someone who is worried about being wrongly accused.
No.
Because like you said, there wasn't a lot of pushback on, well, I dropped her off.
Right. Like, I don't know. I dropped her off.
Yeah.
And that would be the non-guilty person's natural response.
Agreed. Now, 3 days after Shantieya failed to come home, so now we're at the night of May 28th, Latonya made a decision about how she was going to report this. She didn't call it in. She went to the 10th District Station in person. And she was specific later about why. She said she wanted them to see her face so they'd understand her concern was real. It probably went the way you would expect it to, which was not the way she needed it to.
Shocking.
Right? The desk officer told her not to worry. He floated the idea that Shantieya might just be off somewhere with a boyfriend. And then he told her to give it 48 hours before they'd file anything.
It's funny. I was watching, of course, true crime shows this weekend. And I think it was on Saturday. And there was 2 like back-to-back episodes of various different cases. And both of them, of course, when they first reported missing, it was like, oh, they're off. They've run off somewhere. They're just this, they're just that. And Eric was like, why? And I'm like, oh, this is every case.
Yeah.
I go, you would think that now I understand that, yes, statistically also most people are located within the first 24 hours or they show back up again and it's not necessarily a missing person. So, but you would be shocked at it's just every single time you go to say like, this is not normal. They're like, oh no, it's totally normal.
Right.
They're a runaway. They're off partying. She just went off with a guy. Like it's maddening. And he was like floored.
Yeah.
And I
When
was
you
like,
don't spend time in true crime.
right. He was like, what?
Yeah.
And both times it was like where 3 minutes in, he's like, no, there's something wrong with this scenario. Like, how can they not see that? I'm like, that's what we always say.
That is what we keep asking.
Mm-hmm.
How do they not see it?
Yeah.
And, for example, in this one, she had already waited 3 days.
Right.
This wasn't, she's coming back the next day. Why 48 more hours?
Right.
When she went to the police station, she had brought her cousin with her, and the cousin was the one who held the line. She flat out refused to leave that station without a report being taken, full stop. And at some point in that conversation, the family mentioned that Shantieya had bipolar disorder. Now, Latonya and her cousin didn't know it at the time, but that detail should have changed everything about how this was handled. Under that classification, police are supposed to use, that should have flagged her as at risk and triggered an immediate investigation, not this 48-hour wait and see after you've already waited 3 days.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I feel like it never triggers that.
Well, yeah, I'm like, is that just a Chicago thing?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
It would be great if that were an everywhere thing, though.
Yeah.
Now, the station did eventually take the report, and the last thing an officer said to Latonya as she left was, if she shows up, give us a call. And I think they meant that because nobody from the department was calling her. No one called that night, not the next day. 4 days went by in complete silence before Latonya heard anything back. And I want you to think about that for a minute because it's not just a bad customer service story. Under Illinois law, police are not legally allowed to refuse an in-person missing person report.
Oh.
They're also not allowed to make a family wait any set number of hours, regardless of the person's age or circumstance. It doesn't matter what somebody's lifestyle looked like, how long they've been out of contact, and the law is not ambiguous about this. And yet, a later investigation into how Chicago police handle exactly this situation found more than a dozen formal complaints over just a few years of officers doing precisely what had happened to Latonya, turning families away, telling them to come back later. And if you don't know that law, you're expecting that they're giving you accurate information.
Well, yeah, they're law enforcement. So
Yes.
they're supposed to be well-versed in laws and following them as this prime example of being law-abiding.
Exactly. And it shouldn't be on the person coming to you to file the report to know the ins and outs of all Chicago and Illinois law.
Right.
Not one of the officers from those formal complaints was ever disciplined for it.
Of course not.
No. And most of the people filing those complaints were Black mothers trying to report their own children missing.
And there it is.
Here it is. So for 4 days, Latonya Moore had already done everything right. She'd shown up in person. She'd insisted. She'd gotten the report filed. And yet nobody was looking for her daughter. So she went and looked herself. Now, she says on the night she filed the report, she was unable to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? She started organizing her own search. Family, friends, whoever would come. They put up flyers at gas stations and corner stores. They drove the neighborhood block by block, talking to anyone who would talk to them. At one point, her search party went to an abandoned apartment where another missing girl, Sidaria, had recently been found. And we'll talk more about her in a minute. They were checking to see whether Shantieya might be there too. The door was unlocked the security chain removed. Sidaria's blood was still on the floor. Nobody was in there, though, except squatters. Latonya also went through Shantieya's phone records on her own, trying to find anything police weren't finding. And because officers still hadn't come to collect her cell phone from the house, days after she told them it was sitting right there, Latonya ended up personally texting and calling back and forth with the man she believed had killed her daughter.
The one who'd already threatened her.
Mm-hmm. Her own words about that whole stretch: police weren't doing what they were supposed to do, so I had to do it on my own. Now, to be clear about something else that's standard here, because it's not a small thing, Patricia Casey, who is a former Chicago police commander who used to oversee the missing persons desk, has explained what's supposed to happen the moment a report like this gets filed. Officers are supposed to send a car out to the missing person's home. They're supposed to go look around. And that's not an extraordinary step. That's baseline procedure. And I don't have anything confirming Chicago police ever actually collected that phone at all. Not that week, not in the weeks to come. And I looked for it. If they eventually did it, it isn't in anything publicly available. What I do know is that a mother sat in her daughter's bedroom, going through her call log herself, texting back and forth with the man she believed to be a murderer, because the people whose job that was hadn't shown up.
That's just awful.
Awful. On June 4th, with nothing coming from police, Latonya held her own press conference outside that 10th district station with a local pastor, Reverend Robin Hood, standing beside her, publicly asking why nobody had looked.
I mean, thank God she got a press conference, and press was there, because that's wild that she had to do that all on her own.
I think what we're about to talk about next is why she was able to get it. Because Shantieya was not the only one.
So you would think that would make the police act more concerned.
Oh, don't worry. None of them are connected. They have nothing to do with each other.
Of course not.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah.
However, no one in the community felt that way.
Obviously.
Yeah. So that same spring, on the same stretch of Chicago's west side, other women and girls had already started disappearing. Sidaria Davis, who we mentioned just a minute ago, was only 15 years old. She'd gone missing on April 27th, about a month before Shantieya. She was last seen leaving home in the morning. Her mother reported her missing the very next day. An 18-year-old named Anna Stanislawczyk had been missing since mid-March. A 15-year-old named Victoria Garrett went missing around early June. By the time all of this came to a head, people in the neighborhood were counting at least 4 women and girls who'd vanished since March, and they were doing the counting themselves because it was a long time before anybody official would even talk about it.
Okay, yeah, that feels very serial.
Yes.
Serial killer, serial kidnapping.
Agreed.
Serial missing girls all around the same age. I mean, hello.
And, yes, Shantieya's a little bit older, but she was slender. She
looks younger.
Young. Exactly. Yeah. They also point out that Sidaria knew the same guy who we'll talk about that Latonya thinks is responsible.
Oh. And the plot thickens.
Yeah. Now, when you search for this case, the reporting around this time talks about how real the fear in the neighborhood was.
Yeah.
And they were talking about 6 women, not 4.
Oh.
And that was the rumor moving through the community. When police finally did address it in mid-June, they only confirmed 4: Sidaria, Shantieya, Anna, and Victoria. My guess, and it's only a guess, is that people were folding in cases from other parts of the city into the same fear. I mean, which is justifiable. There was a 13-year-old girl named Yasminda Mitchell who went missing around the same time from a South Side neighborhood, which was miles away. And so they say there's no real connection to the cluster at all. But they do also point out that she spent time in the West Side area.
There you go. There's a connection.
Agreed. So just because police are saying not even in the same, I mean, come on, miles away, spending time in the same neighborhood as these other 4 lived in. At the time, though, people in the community were certain that something predatory was loose, and they were connecting cases that police then said weren't actually connected. Now, of those 4, one had a resolution that didn't end in tragedy. Victoria Garrett was found and reunited with her family in mid-June. Police didn't say much more publicly about where she'd been or what happened. Anna's case is murkier. The last confirmed statement from police was that she'd, quote, been seen, but hadn't returned home yet. And I looked for anything more recent than that and came up empty.
So that doesn't make sense because she's a minor, so she has to go home. These aren't adults.
Right.
So I love that. Oh, she's been seen but hasn't gone home yet. And Victoria Garrett, I get it because, again, she's a minor, so they're going to protect her details.
Anna was 18.
Okay.
So she was a little bit older than Victoria, but still, I would think to try to put the community's fears to rest.
Right, you would delineate that, like, no, she's choosing to not be at home.
If that is true,
right.
Yes. I couldn't find a single newspaper clipping with her name in it, though. Like
Anna's?
I could find it is in other resources that are very reputable or like newspaper online only archives, but couldn't find the resolution there.
I mean, I guess I'm not surprised because if they're not actively investigating any of them, there wouldn't be any information.
Right. Now, one more thing, Anna was white, while Victoria, Sedaria, and Shantieya were all Black.
Okay.
I don't really know.
I mean, really nothing because Anna's, they're saying they don't have any confirmation of her case either.
So we talked about Victoria being reunited with her family. On May 11th, Sedaria's body was found in an abandoned apartment in the 1100 block of South Hamlin Avenue. She'd been gone about 2 weeks.
And that's close to where Shantieya is, right?
Really close.
Okay. Oh, yeah, because the family went and searched there. Okay.
And then on June 7th, while Latonya was still waiting for any real update, a body was found under a car in an abandoned garage in the 1800 block of South Central Park Avenue. And this is only about a block away from where they lived. Witnesses at the scene said the body had red hair, which Shantieya did at the time. It was so decomposed that police couldn't identify it by sight. They had to rely on dental records, fingerprints, or DNA, which took time. And then the confirmation came back it was Shantieya. Now, when they found her, she only weighed 57 pounds because of so much decomp.
Oh, wow.
At the medical examiner's office, the only thing that they could use to visually recognize her was a tattoo from Shantieya's arm, which was her nephew's name written in cursive.
How long had it been?
A little bit over 2 weeks.
Okay. So 2 weeks between Sedaria and 2 weeks now between Shantieya. Okay.
And I tried to look for, because everything says like an abandoned garage or an abandoned parking structure. Whose car was it? How long had it been parked
Maybe
there?
no one's. They said under a car though. Yeah.
Was it just part of what was happening to that parking garage being abandoned? I'm not sure.
How does a parking garage get abandoned?
And when her whole family is searching,
right,
and it's only a block away.
I mean, it reads more like she was placed there.
Exactly.
Although, if the decomp was that bad already, I mean, it sounds like she was probably killed fairly quickly from when she first disappeared.
Right. That was the 2 parts I was trying to reconcile as well.
Well, did Sedaria have decomp?
She did, but it doesn't sound like it was as significant.
Okay.
But she was also in like a building.
Yeah.
Like that abandoned house.
Oh, yeah, an enclosed space. Okay.
Yeah. In the days right after both bodies were found, police actually said publicly that neither woman showed obvious signs of trauma and that they didn't believe either death was a murder.
What?
Yep, that was their official position for a while. The Cook County medical examiner disagreed and ruled both deaths homicides.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Medical examiner.
thank you. Now, one more thing I want to bring up why this particular neighborhood reacted the way it did. This wasn't the first time people on Chicago's south and west sides had raised this exact alarm. A researcher named Thomas Hargrove, who runs something called the Murder Accountability Project, had already spent years flagging a much larger pattern. 51 women, mostly Black, mostly found strangled and left in abandoned buildings, alleys, and lots on the south and west sides going back to 2001.
That's a lot of coincidences.
Yeah. And his algorithm doesn't think it's a coincidence.
No.
And it's the same kind that has been used to help catch serial killers in other cities.
Yeah.
And that flagged the collection of murders as having, quote, characteristics suggestive of serial murder.
Yeah. Strangled, abandoned building, alley,
Yep.
or a lot in both two specific areas. Like, yeah, that seems pretty. There's a pattern.
Yeah. And not that far from each other. I mean, the south and west side, not
No.
completely separate. Activists have been calling this the work of a serial killer for years before Shantieya ever went missing. So when 4 women vanished within 10 weeks of each other in the same few square miles,
Yeah.
and then 2 of them turn up dead, literally in an abandoned building and parking structure.
I mean, can we say escalation?
Exactly. The community isn't reacting to a new fear here. They're reacting to one that they've been sitting with for years unaddressed and wanting answers. By mid-June, the rumors on the west side had gotten loud enough that Chicago police felt they had to respond directly, which it took too long for them to respond. Superintendent Eddie Johnson called together about a dozen community activists to address what he called, quote, misinformation spreading on social media. Specifically, the idea that as many as 6 women had been snatched off West Side streets by one person, a serial predator. So Johnson pushed back on that framing. His words at that meeting, he said, quote, somehow the community has linked all 6, and there's just no evidence of that. Then the community calls us with bogus tips. They think they're helping. Those 1,000 tips are unrelated, and we have to chase all of those down. Just doesn't feel like he gets it.
No. I mean, I don't know. I understand Chicago's large, but 6 people, 6 girls
In the same
area, same method.
Hmm.
I mean, you gotta kind of question it.
Exactly. And I understand what he was trying to manage. He was trying to manage flooded tips.
Right. Yeah,
in
you don't want.
neighborhood.
Yes, I get the whole. You're going to be extra. You're going to call in any little thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if you let it go on this long, that's the cross you have to bear now.
Yes, exactly. Why let it get to mid-June? At a separate press conference around that same time, Johnson said this on the record about Sadaria and Shantieya. The 2 young ladies we are speaking about were involved in narcotics sales, prostitution, and using narcotics together.
Okay, none of that equals it's okay to be murdered.
Also, it's untrue. You're just trying to give a reason for
Right.
why you don't care,
Right.
which is completely
It's irrelevant.
irrelevant. And the medical examiner did confirm that Shantieya had no illegal drugs in her system at all. Those comments caused public outcry, and Johnson's response was, quote, if people took offense, all I can do is apologize. And I did. I just talked to Davis's mother. But If we're going to talk about facts, we're going to talk about facts.
Again, even if those are facts, none of that is justification to get murdered.
No. And like you said, completely irrelevant. Tell us what you're doing to catch who did this. Tell us if you have leads or anything related to trying to solve these two homicides. It took years, but Johnson did eventually say something different. In an interview years later, reflecting on it, he told reporters, quote, "Just because of who they are or where they come from or their lifestyle, that doesn't mean the police shouldn't take it as serious because we should. Somebody left that person." I just don't think he knows what an apology is.
No, and again, you're still tripling down on this narrative that one is irrelevant and two, at least for Shantieya, is not true.
Exactly. Now, there's a name behind almost everything I just told you. Let's talk about him now. Both women were last seen with a man named Charlie Booker. At the time, he was 23, 24 years old. He was out on bond for a parole violation, meaning he was already in the system, already known to have broken the terms of an earlier release while all of this was happening. Now, there's a detail in the reporting from that same June meeting I mentioned that I want to flag because I can't fully reconcile it yet. The Tribune's coverage from mid-June describes police saying the man they wanted to talk to had just been located that week in Tennessee, and they said in custody on unrelated charges. And that is weeks before the event that actually put him on the radar happened. So either Booker already had a separate run-in with law enforcement in Tennessee in early to mid-June, or the timeline in the reporting doesn't line up cleanly. It's also possible they were referring to someone else they wanted to talk to. I don't want to guess past what I actually know. I just wanted to point out that inconsistency. What I do know for certain, on July 15th, 2018, police say Booker stabbed a woman in Garfield Park on Chicago's west side. 3 days later, on the morning of July 18th, in South Memphis, a woman was raped in an alley on Porter Street and shot 3 times, once in the head. She miraculously survived. After he did this, he allegedly stole her car. He was driving that same stolen car that afternoon when an Illinois state trooper clocked him speeding on Interstate 57. That traffic stop at 1:25 in the afternoon on July 18th is what actually caught him. Once he was in custody, charged at that point with possession of a stolen vehicle, obstructing identification, and driving on a suspended license, it came out that he was already wanted in Memphis for the rape and shooting from that same morning and wanted for questioning by Chicago police about Shantieya and Shantieya. Sit with that sequence for a second. Stabbing on July 15th, then a rape and shooting on the morning of July 18th.
Escalation.
Escalation.
I just said it. He's escalating.
And those are fast, both
Yeah.
of those. But the thing that finally stopped him wasn't either of those crimes. It was a speeding ticket.
Yeah. It's always something dumb.
It is.
But again, that kind of almost shows state of mind that he felt invincible at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Because, okay, pull me over on for speeding.
Which I think is what I take away from those texts, too.
Yeah.
Feeling invincible.
Yeah.
His record by that point already included drug charges, theft, and domestic battery. He was held first in Kankakee County Jail and then moved to Cook County Jail once the Memphis and Chicago cases against him started moving forward. And here's something I only found more recently. Reverend Robin Hood, the same pastor who stood beside Latonya at her press conference, has said publicly that he personally warned Chicago police about Booker's connection to both Shantieya and Shantieya before any of this happened. Before the stabbing, before the shooting in Memphis. His words, Booker was a repeat offender who continued to walk the streets despite that warning.
That's pretty telling coming from a pastor. The fact that he's known in the community and the pastor's aware of him, I mean, come on.
Right.
And providing you with a lead.
In both of these women's murders.
There's connections with both of them.
Which would have prevented what happened to the next two women, the next two that we know of, at least. So with that, it isn't a case where the system was slow. It's a case where someone handed police the exact thread to pull. They didn't pull it until a speeding ticket did the job for them. Booker was formally charged in the Chicago stabbing, so the one at Garfield Park. He entered a not guilty plea there. He was also charged in Memphis with rape and shooting. And I don't have anything on how either of those cases actually resolved. I went looking, including through newspaper archives, and came up with nothing further. As far as I can find, the record kind of goes quiet on Charlie Booker after late 2018, at least publicly.
I mean, I have to assume he's already out on parole. So if anything, he went back inside.
Right. Now, to be clear, Charlie Booker has never been charged in connection with either woman's death, Sadaria or Shantieya. Not then, and not in anything I've been able to find since. He was questioned more than once. He was, as far as I can still tell, the person police describe as someone they wanted to talk to, but person of interest is not charged, and so far, it's never become one. Now, Eddie Johnson told that community meeting there was no evidence connecting 6 disappearances to one person. And maybe that's true, but 2 of those women, 2 who ended up murdered, were both last seen with the same man, a man who went on, within a matter of weeks, to be accused of a stabbing, a rape, and a near-fatal shooting. So I'm not going to tell you what conclusion to draw from that. I'm just telling you what's true and letting it sit there the way that it sat unresolved for Latonya for years now. Now, here's something most people don't know about how a case like this actually moves or doesn't move as soon as the news camera leaves. Somewhere along the way, a detective working Shantieya's file requested that her missing person case, the original report Latonya had fought to get filed, be formally closed with a classification of non-criminal. His supervisor approved it.
What?
Yep. This happened even though a separate homicide investigation into her death was technically still open. 2 records about the same woman telling completely different stories about whether what happened to her was a crime. Now, this is not a one-off clerical mistake either. Reporters who later dug into how Chicago tracks missing persons found that across 2 decades, the department closed 99.8% of missing persons cases as non-criminal, meaning, on paper, the person was presumed to have turned up safe and nothing bad had happened.
So they're just faking their numbers.
Yep.
Making sure their statistics look good.
Yeah, but they don't.
No.
Out of hundreds of thousands of cases, fewer than 300 were ever classified as a crime. And only 10 of those were reclassified as homicides. And Shantieya's case isn't even counted among the 10 because of exactly what I just described. Her missing person file and her homicide file were never linked to each other in the department's own data.
Which, I mean, okay, so going by that, it's like they're saying the missing person case is closed because we found her body.
Basically, but it's non-criminal.
I know. I'm like, okay, yeah, okay. So it's almost like semantics.
Yeah.
They're just saying, well, we found her, so it's not a missing person. Case closed. And they can say, well, it's non-criminal because we don't know how she died. And they're technically not lying. However,
that is a very thin line there.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's, I mean, I'm going to use the word semantics, but it's literally, they're really stretching the truth on this one.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand closing the missing person file. She's not missing
But
anymore.
it should be linked.
But it should be linked. And it is criminal.
Yeah.
I don't understand what even data point you're going for.
I mean,
there.
It sounds like you need a new drop down that says found, but, homicide. So again, you're closing your missing person. It's like, really, do you just need a new drop down? Like, what can we do here?
Right.
How can we help you?
How can we help you fix this?
Yeah.
Ridiculous. The same reporting found at least 4 other cases where a detective had explicitly written that the missing person had returned home, even though the family was telling them at the time that their loved one had not.
That's wild.
Just that one, I don't even know the semantics there.
Yeah, like that's just plain. I don't even know what you call that. Not doing your job.
Yeah. Across recent years of missing persons records, the officer's actual arrival time on scene is simply missing.
Wow.
And it's missing from the department's own paperwork in nearly half of all cases. Not delayed, not filled in later, completely missing. So
Chicago has a budget. So I'm like, I just don't feel like you can use the whole, we have money issues. Like, this is administrative and clerical. Like, come on.
Yeah.
You could get an intern to do this for you.
I think it's intentional because the law is that they have to go show up to the missing person's house. So they either don't put the time on or maybe make it up if they don't go out there for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because also, if the time's not there, it could have been that they didn't go at all.
Yeah.
And this isn't just Shantieya's story either. I think it's important to say plainly, Black Chicagoans make up roughly 2/3 of all missing person cases citywide over the last 20 years. Black girls and women between ages 10 and 20 alone account for about 30% of all missing persons cases in the city, despite being roughly 2% of Chicago's total population.
And that's very telling.
Yes. When journalists spent months trying to get Chicago police to explain any of this, how they classify cases, how they train officers, what could possibly account for these gaps, the department's media affairs declined to answer for the entire length of the investigation. A spokesperson for Chicago's mayor did eventually respond, acknowledging the pattern directly, said, quote, "The historical disparities that exist in our city when it comes to solving missing person cases among Black and brown Chicagoans, and Black women in particular, is an example of the lack of visibility for marginalized communities. We need to see people in order to take care of them," which is true. But also, why wouldn't
Okay, thanks.
anyone part of it on a day-to-day basis respond?
Yeah.
At all? Let's talk about the DNA in this. In March of 2019, at a state Senate hearing on Illinois' DNA testing backlog, Latonya testified for the first time about her daughter's case. At that point, there were more than 5,000 pending DNA cases statewide and 527 open homicide cases, specifically at the Chicago Crime Lab. She told the senators plainly, "I haven't even found out how my daughter was murdered." And this is 10 months later from when she went missing. Robin Woolery from the Illinois State Police Forensic Science Division responded with something that was clearly meant sincerely. She said, quote, "The families have my sincere condolences. We have a large backlog we need to address, and we're going to do everything we can to meet that." Senator Patricia Van Pelt, who chaired that committee, said something that kind of has sat with me. She said, quote, "We know that there's a lot of DNA evidence that's not being analyzed, and as a result, we walk among murderers."
And so, yeah, they could probably have prevented other murders. So who's culpable now?
Right?
The murderer or the state?
who could have locked them up if they did the testing to link said person. Latonya went back to the same committee again and then again. By January of 2020, it was her third time testifying in front of that panel in under a year. That time, the backlog numbers actually looked better on paper. The state said cases waiting more than a year had dropped from over 70 down to 14, and new hires and new lab funding were coming. But none of that meant anything for Shantieya's file specifically. Latonya told the committee she had no communication from law enforcement at all about the forensic side of her daughter's case. And that's when she said the line that we started this episode with. My daughter, to me, feels like a John Doe. She don't even exist. What justice does she have? It gets worse from there, honestly. Later reporting found that the actual physical evidence in Shantieya's case had at some point effectively disappeared inside the system. So when we talk about the numbers improving that much, there is that little nugget that sits in my brain wondering if it improved because it disappeared. Chicago police told a journalist that DNA evidence had been resubmitted for further analysis. The Illinois State Police Crime Lab said they had no record that anything had ever been submitted to them. Latonya was told that there'd been a handprint recovered from the garage where Shantieya was found, and then later she was told there was no evidence at all and that the case was closed. She called to check in with the detective who'd been assigned to her daughter's case and learned that he was no longer even assigned to it, which no one had told her when that happened or why. By 2023, 5 years after her daughter's murder, Latonya stood in front of a crowd at an event for missing and murdered women in Chicago in tears and said, "Where is the DNA? The DNA vanished in 2020. It's 2023. Her cousin, Christina Hopkins, who now directs an organization focused on missing and murdered women and girls, has stood beside her at more than one of those hearings and rallies. So here's where this actually sits, not unsolved because there's nothing to go on. There's a name. There's a pattern of violence against women in the same window of time. There's DNA evidence that was collected. It's unsolved because a case that should have been treated as urgent from day one instead quietly was filed as non-criminal. The evidence in that case was misplaced or unaccounted for inside a system too backed up to keep track of its own paperwork, while the one person who never stopped pushing for her daughter kept showing up year after year to rooms full of officials who kept telling her, not yet.
I wonder if the evidence is gone because they labeled it non-criminal.
Very possible.
Because if it's non-criminal, why are we keeping this stuff?
If it was tied to her missing person case. And that's the other thing. Depending on what every state's rules are, depending on what the case is labeled as, they have a certain amount of time before they destroy that evidence.
Right, because they can't hold it forever, which is why I'm saying I wonder if they look, oh, it's non-criminal.
Right.
Get rid of this.
Only in a homicide, and they are required, at least in Arizona, to hold on to that evidence until the person who was convicted is fully finished with every appeal they have or their sentence is over. But for unsolved ones, they have to hang on to that.
Well, yeah.
Now, I want to pause here and tell you that these statistics and things that I've just described to you, like the non-criminal closure, the vanished DNA, it isn't something that I pieced together on my own. It comes from a 2-year investigation by 2 nonprofit newsrooms, City Bureau and the Invisible Institute. They analyzed over 1 million Chicago police records and interviewed more than 40 families to figure out exactly how this keeps happening. Their reporting on Shantieya's case and dozens of others like it won the 2024 Pulitzer Prize for local reporting. And I only mention that because it matters. This isn't a fringe theory about how police treat Black women who go missing. It's the most decorated local journalism in the country, confirming case by case exactly what families like Latonya's have been saying for years. And she is very much not the only mother telling this story. A woman named Shirley Enoch Hill has been looking for her daughter, Sonia Roos, since 2016. Sonia is still missing. Her mother says a detective had the chance early on to interview Sonia's abusive boyfriend and chose to wait. While he waited, the boyfriend died of an overdose before anyone ever sat down with him. In Shirley's words, when he died, the truth of what happened to Sonia did as well. She believes that if her daughter had been white and from the North Side, that interview would have happened immediately. Sonia herself, before she disappeared, had told her mother, "Mother, it's the demons that I'm running from. There are things I can't face." She'd been facing a struggle with mental illness and substance use disorder, and her mother sees that struggle as part of what made police treat her as disposable rather than urgent.
And we know that people self-medicate when they have mental illness.
Exactly.
Like, a lot of times it's easier to get than legal drugs to help your mental illness.
Exactly, especially if you don't have insurance that will support the price. Yes.
And even then, you can have it and it still not support the price.
Well, exactly. There's a case very similar in shape to Shantieya's. And we did mention this case when we talked about the Chicago Four last fall. But a young woman named Shantieya Bohannon called her sister one night in 2016 and said she had a gun held to her head. Her mother went to police that same night to report her missing. She was told to wait 24 hours anyways, the exact thing Illinois law says officers cannot do. By the time anyone searched the address in question, it was the following evening, and they found nothing. Bohannon's body was found in a garbage bag 3 days after that.
Shameful.
And she's another one whose missing person case was closed as non-criminal and not related
Well,
to
you
her
generally
homicide.
don't put yourself in a garbage bag.
But non-criminal. And a woman named Daisy Hayes, 65 years old, went missing on May 1st of 2018. So right in the same window as the others that we were talking about. Her daughter, Shantieya Smith, says that instead of investigating, police told her, "We know your mom frequents the liquor store."
And
Exactly.
you can buy other things at a liquor store just besides liquor.
Yes. And also, she's still missing. What does that have to do with looking for her?
Yeah, then go look around the liquor store.
You have a place to start. Let's do it. Surveillance footage from around that time actually showed Hayes' boyfriend dragging a heavy suitcase to a dumpster.
Well, that's not suspicious.
I always throw away my suitcases full of clothes.
Right? And
whatever.
dragging an empty one? I mean, come on. If you're dragging it, it's because there's something in there.
Yep. It still took a full week for Chicago police to even assign a detective to the case. And we should mention Hayes' age should have automatically qualified her as an at-risk missing person.
Interesting.
Which should have guaranteed immediate investigation.
Should have.
Should have.
Supposed to.
Doesn't appear to.
No.
We have different women, different neighborhoods, different years. Same pattern over and over. A family reporting urgency and a department finding a reason not to treat it that way. Latonya eventually left Chicago. She moved south first, and then more recently, further still, she now lives in a rural part of Illinois near the Iowa border, something like 140 miles from the city where she had her kids, raised them, the place she called home. She's the one raising Shantieya's daughter. She would be 15 now. In an interview recently, Latonya has said that leaving Chicago wasn't really a choice by the end. She was behind on rent, close to eviction, and felt like the city that had failed her had nothing left to offer her either. In her granddaughter's bedroom, there's a sticker on the wall that just says, "Mom." The same little girl that Shantieya used to walk to school every single morning. She doesn't call Latonya grandma. She calls her mom because she doesn't want kids at school to know her actual mother is gone. They keep Shantieya's urn in their home. In 2023, Latonya was invited to sit on a brand new Illinois task force on missing and murdered women created by state lawmakers, meeting for the first time that May. A local pastor who'd helped her called personally with the invitation. She thought hard about it. She liked the idea of finally being in a room with police leadership, telling them directly what she'd learned, making sure they heard it. What she told them in her own words was something like, they need to stop thinking that everyone is into prostitution and drugs. You don't know someone's story.
Fully agree.
Me too. In the end, though, she said no. Her reasoning, she said, I'm grieving, but I'm looking for closure. If I get closure, then I could rest. If it don't ever rest, then I'll take it to my grave. She has said she'll find other ways to honor Shantieya instead, including a concrete idea of her own, that cities should put real money directly into the hands of families that are forced into doing their own searches, the way she once had to. Her words, it's like taking back the block and building community when people are so distant. Every June for several years now, people gather on Chicago's South Side for something called the We Walk for Her March, which is organized by a community group called KOCO, mothers, daughters, sisters, cousins, walking together in the heat, most of them holding the name of somebody who was never found or never solved. Shantieya's name has been among them, so has Sidaria's. Also, Sonia and Shante and Daisy, and dozens of others going back decades in some cases. Women whose cases went cold and stayed cold in a way that a lot of these families simply believe would not have happened if their daughters had looked different or lived somewhere else. As of everything I've been able to find, nobody has ever been charged in Shantieya Smith's murder. Like I said, I couldn't find what Charlie Booker was charged with in the other incidents
The
in
Memphis
Chicago
one?
and Memphis. But I do know no charges in Shantieya and Sidaria's death. The DNA evidence from her case was, at last reporting, unaccounted for.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's lost because it was classified as non-criminal.
Probably if it was tied to that case
So it's
file
either
instead of her homicide
disposed
case
of
file.
or it's lost.
Yes. I keep coming back to the image of Latonya at the medical examiner's office being shown a tattoo on a screen because there wasn't enough left of her daughter to identify any other way. It's such a small human-specific thing, the kind of detail you'd only know if you loved someone. And I think that's really the whole point of telling the story at all. Not the DNA backlog or the case numbers. As much as all of that matters, it's that Shantieya was somebody's whole morning routine, somebody's whole reason for getting up early. She was never a John Doe. She had a name the entire time, Shantieya Smith. It just took a system that was supposed to protect her far too long to act like any of it mattered.
That wraps up this episode of Vanished Voices. Thank you for being a part of this community and for listening with compassion. For more on today's story, including further reading and the resources we used to write this episode, visit our blog at vanishedvoicespodcast.com. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at @vanishedvoicespod. We'd love to connect with you there. If you value today's episode, sharing and rating the podcast goes a long way in helping us reach more listeners and elevate those important voices. We're on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and just about anywhere else you listen. And as always, refuse to let these voices vanish.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.